Hey guys, tonight we begin with the brutally hot, soot-covered life of a man who quite literally forged the medieval world. The Blacksmith. You've probably seen them in movies, hammering glowing iron in slow motion, with sparks flying majestically through the air. But trust me, being a real medieval blacksmith was nothing like a dramatic training montage. It was dirty, exhausting, blister-inducing work, and in most cases it absolutely sucked. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You were born into fire, not metaphorical fire. The real kind. The kind that hisses when it touches wet skin and leaves scars that never quite fade. The forge is the heartbeat of your family, and before you learn to talk, you learn to flinch when sparks leap too close. Your baby blanket smells like iron. Your lullaby is the creak of bellows and the clang of metal. And the warmest thing in your life is not affection, but the furnace. There's no room for gentleness in your father's workshop. The moment you can stand without tipping into the coal pit, you're given a job. At first, it's harmless. Well, relatively. Sweep the ash. Bring water. Don't trip over the dog that hasn't been seen since last winter. But before long, your chores include holding iron rods while your father hammers, guessing temperatures with your palm, and pretending not to cry when the edge of a brand new horseshoe burns through your tunic. By 6, you're not a child, you're an apprentice. A word that sounds noble until you realize it means tiny assistant with 0 wages, no bedtime, and constant exposure to minor concussions. You don't attend school, you don't climb trees. Your education is shaped with steel and shouted instructions, and every lesson is reinforced with the sharp sting of red-hot learning. And your father? He's terrifying in a way only smoke-wreathed, monosyllabic men can be. He doesn't explain, he demonstrates. A single raised eyebrow means do better. A grunt might mean not awful. And a thrown hammer? Well, that means you forgot to pump the bellows again. His hands are cracked like dried earth, his arms as thick as barrel staves, and when he tells you to hit it harder, you do. Not because you understand the metal, but because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Your world shrinks to the size of the forge. The same 4 walls, the same acrid smells, the same relentless rhythm of hammer, hiss, and howl. The idea of weekend doesn't exist. The fire never rests, so neither do you. If a farmer's plow breaks or a knight's blade shatters, someone's got to fix it. Usually before nightfall and ideally without complaint. Every morning the fire is stoked before the sun rises. You eat standing up, if at all. A crust of bread, maybe a chunk of cheese, and then it's time to get to work. You swing hammers before your bones have finished growing. You haul buckets heavier than your sense of self-worth. You wake up sore and go to bed even sorer, wondering if other kids' beds are made of something that doesn't creak like an old cart. It doesn't feel like a job, it feels like a sentence. You envy the kids herding goats through the field, even if their feet are muddy and they reek of livestock. They laugh, they chase, they sit in grass taller than you and throw rocks at trees. You? You get a rock when it's molten, and your job is to hit it until it becomes something useful. Even your dreams aren't free. You dream in heat, in sparks, in the metallic tang of blood and sweat. And sometimes, just sometimes, you dream you're somewhere else entirely. Anywhere that doesn't demand your skin as payment for survival. But reality always wakes you up. You learn to keep your head down, to move fast, work faster. You memorize your father's moods the way a courtier memorizes a king's whims. You learn when to speak, when to vanish, and when to pretend you're interested in whatever horrible project he's dumped on your side of the anvil. You don't complain. You don't ask why, you just obey. And yet, in some twisted way, the forge starts to feel like home. Not in a soft pillow, warm soup kind of way. More like the way a prisoner comes to know the corners of his cell. It's all you've ever known. It's all you expect to know. Your world is ash, heat, and the expectation that you'll turn pain into productivity. Historians still argue whether blacksmithing children had any free time at all. Some records suggest festival days were allowed off, but only if no one's blade broke. Others imply the apprenticeship system was less brutal and more educational. But if you ask your fingers, your spine, or your ever-burned forearms, they'd roll their eyes if they still had the muscles to. The strangest thing? Despite everything, there's a flicker of pride in you. When the horseshoe fits perfectly, when your nails line up straight in the barrel, when your father doesn't yell, just gives you the briefest nod. That's the forge's love language. It doesn't hug, it acknowledges. And in this world, that's enough. Because in the blacksmith's family, love is not said. It's hammered. Your childhood doesn't come in seasons, it comes in burns. Some fade, others stay forever. A scar on your left wrist from when you touched the branding iron while it was still red. A line across your collarbone from when a bucket of nails slipped and you tried to catch it mid-fall. Your earliest memories are not of lullabies or birthday cakes, but the smell of sweat soaked into wool, the sharp clang of hammer on iron, and your father yelling, "Not like that." You don't play. That's not a concept here. If you're moving and not working, you must be hiding. If you're sitting, someone's going to assume you've died. Your only toys are broken tongs, bent nails, and bits of slag you keep in a pile like some sad little treasure hoard. You try to pretend they're soldiers or coins, but it's hard to imagine dragons and heroes when you can barely keep your eyes open. Your playroom? The shed behind the forge, which smells like damp coal and disappointment. You make a game of dodging the sparks as your father works. Guess the temperature by color, red, orange, yellow, white, and oops, you guessed wrong again. That's another blister for the collection. Your friends, what few you have left, talk about chasing frogs or building stick forts. You talk about hammer grips and blister salve. You're 10, and your bedtime stories involve different iron-carbon ratios. You wake before the rooster, not because you want to, because your father says a lazy apprentice is a useless one. So up you go. You pump the bellows until your arms scream. You sweep the ash, restack the coal, sharpen tools, feed the fire, feed the dog, if he comes back. And occasionally, if the gods are kind, feed yourself. Breakfast is optional, usually cold, frequently stolen by the cat. You eat while standing, balancing a crust of rye in one hand and an oil-soaked rag in the other. If you drop the bread in the ashes, that's just seasoning. If you drop a tool, you pray your father didn't see it. You're the shop's grunt. That means you do everything no one else wants to. Carry heavy things, hold hot things, and smile through it like it's a reward. If you do something well, no one says anything. If you mess up, suddenly the silence explodes into curses so creative they could curdle goat's milk. Free time? You had that once, maybe. But you traded it for a lifetime of just one more job. When your muscles give out, there's no sympathy. Just a glare and the phrase, "You'll toughen up." You don't remember the last time you had clean fingernails or a shirt without scorch marks. And yet, through it all, there's something not quite like pride, but survival. You've learned how to stoke a fire with just a few breaths and dry sticks. You can spot bad ore by smell alone. You know how to turn iron into something beautiful, or at least functional. That knowledge, beaten into you one aching swing at a time, starts to feel like power. Sometimes the village kids pass by the workshop. They stop to stare, wide-eyed at the flares and sparks. You see their faces twist between awe and pity. You try not to care. After all, they don't know what it means to make something that people need. They'll never be the reason a door swings, a plow bites the earth, or a wheel rolls again. You will, and that's something. Still, it's hard not to wonder, what would it be like to have a moment that wasn't measured in hammer strokes? To walk through the woods without thinking about how many trees it would take to make enough charcoal for the week? To sleep without soot in your nostrils? Historians still argue whether blacksmith apprentices were more like craftsmen in training or expendable labor. Some guild records suggest structured lessons, careful mentorship, even paid rest days. But that was in cities. Here, in your little smoke-choked village, it's survival first, courtesy never. You're not being trained, you're being hardened. Even your sleep schedule isn't yours. If there's an urgent order, you'll work by candlelight. Your eyes sting, your fingers cramp, and you hallucinate warmth in your frost-bitten boots. You once fell asleep standing up, face first into a tub of water. That was the night your father finally said something kind. Could have drowned. Be smarter next time. You remember it fondly. Your clothes? They're a joke. One singed tunic, patched with so many mismatched fabrics it looks like a quilt held together by soot. Leather apron, cracked, scorched, stiff as a board. Your shoes barely qualify as shoes. More like foot-shaped sorrow with laces. And yet you're stronger than anyone your age. Not in a noble, hero in training way. More like can carry an anvil but can't touch your toes kind of way. Your arms don't bend right anymore and your knees pop like firewood, but hey, those buckets aren't going to haul themselves. By now, you've already made your first full horseshoe. It's crooked, slightly twisted, and looks like it's been chewed by a goat. But it's yours. You hammered it, you quenched it, you filed the rough edges. And when your father saw it, he didn't grunt. He just looked at it, gave the barest shrug, and went back to his work. It was the proudest moment of your life. There's a strange poetry in the pain. You've learned to read metal, to feel it in your bones. You don't know how to write your name yet, but you can shape iron into letters if someone spells it out for you. You've stopped fearing the burn. Now, you just respect it. Like a predator, you've learned to live beside. At night, when the fire finally dims and you lie in your straw pile, every part of you hums. Not from peace, but from echo. The hammer's rhythm doesn't stop when you stop swinging. It beats in your bones like a second heart. You fall asleep with your fingers curled like you're still holding the tongs, and in your dreams, you're not a boy anymore. You're fireproof. You shape swords with a single breath. You forge crowns from nothing, and no one yells. Morning doesn't wake you, the forge does. Its voice is low and slow at first, a hiss from last night's embers sighing under the weight of damp ash. Then the stirring begins, your father clanking about, the bellows groaning as they stretch. The iron rods rattling against the wall like angry bones. You rise with muscles that curse your name. Every joint negotiates its contract of cooperation. Your spine? A cautious collaborator. Your shoulders? Strike prone. You are not just working beside the forge anymore, you are inside it. Part of it. The distinction between you and your surroundings has started to blur. You don't live around the fire, you live in the fire. Your clothes are permeated with smoke. You wear the same outfit every day, not out of fashion or loyalty, but because that's all you own. The soot has stopped staining. It's settled in, like a tenant who's paid up for life. There's a rhythm to the forge that controls everything you do. A kind of grim music. Bellows wheeze, 1, 2. Metal into fire, 3. The sizzle of quenching, 4. Hammer strike, 5. And repeat. It's a song you never asked to learn, but one your body knows by instinct. Sometimes you catch yourself swinging your arms while waiting for the iron to heat, keeping the tempo with invisible notes only you can hear. You don't need to look at your tools to find them. Your fingers know the difference between the wide hammer and the sharp-nosed one. Between the chisel that bites too eagerly and the one that's softened at the edge. Your hands act before your brain can translate the request. Reflexes trained by repetition, fear, and the knowledge that one wrong move can mean a permanent reminder across your skin. You've stopped noticing the heat, not because it's gone, but because it's become normal. Like gravity, it just is. You know which stones in the forge are too hot to sit on, which planks crack first under weight, which parts of the floor try to kill you if you step there barefoot. The pain is no longer a deterrent, it's a metric. It tells you how well you're working. Your ears ring constantly, not from any single blow, but from 1,000 days of hammering. The sound doesn't stop when the work does. It just quiets, like it's hiding behind your heartbeat. When someone speaks to you, you tilt your head slightly, not out of politeness, but to try and find the one ear that still hears somewhat clearly. Historians still debate how deeply blacksmiths identified with their forges. Whether the bond was spiritual, functional, or simply a matter of survival. But anyone who spent time in that dim glow knows the truth. The forge is alive. You feed it. It breathes, it growls when neglected. It sleeps fitfully and demands constant attention. Sometimes when you're alone and everything is quiet, you swear it whispers to you. Encouragement or warning, you're never quite sure. You don't speak much anymore. Words feel strange on your tongue. Most conversations are transactions. Half day to finish. That hinge is too rusted. Come back later. Sentences are too expensive. You save them for when they matter. Your father rarely talks unless he's correcting. And even that has become more of a glance, a lifted brow, or a heavy sigh that somehow communicates every disappointment he's ever felt. When he does speak, it lands like a bell toll. Final. Heavy. Unquestioned. You've grown broader, not taller. That would be asking too much. But your arms are slabs of meat now. Your back, hunched slightly, not from age, but from years of leaning into work that doesn't care for posture. Villagers notice. They whisper. Some call you the boy with the hammer arms. Others just nod and mutter, must be the blacksmith's spawn. Children avoid you, not out of fear exactly, but instinct. You look like a grown man dipped in tar and frustration. You smell like scorched wool and molten regret. When you walk through the village, people step aside without meaning to. Not out of respect, but self-preservation. And still, you're invisible. The noble gets the praise for his polished sword. The knight gets the glory. The farmer boasts of his yield. You built the tool that built the field, sharpened the blade that slew the bandits. But no one sings about hinges. No ballads for well cranks and wheel rims. You are the breath between shouts. The pause no one notices. But you're necessary, and you know it. You've seen the line that forms outside your forge when something breaks. You've seen the way people panic when the bell cracks or the oven door refuses to open. You're the unsung heartbeat of the village. They may not thank you, but they rely on you. And that's its own kind of power. You don't own much. A sleeping mat, a cracked mug, one spare tunic. But you do own this forge. Not legally, of course. Yeah, your father still runs it. But spiritually, practically, it belongs to you more than to him. You know its moods, its weaknesses, its secret hotspots and draft paths. You've cleaned it, fed it, bled in it. That's more than any contract could ever mean. And then there's the metal. When it finally gives in, when the iron bends just right, when it gleams in the quench, when the edge shines under your rasp, it feels like winning a battle you were never sure you'd survive. That moment, that's why you stay. Why you keep swinging. Not for gold, not for thanks. But for the second where your will overcomes the will of something stronger. That's creation. Not the romantic kind. The bruised, blistered, gasping kind. You carry that moment with you when you stumble home at night. Past the goats, past the tavern full of laughter, past the stares and muttered half-greetings. You walk back to your bedroll, arms aching, lungs tight with smoke, ears ringing. And as you lie down, staring at the ceiling beams flickering in firelight, you don't pray for rest. You pray for another piece of iron tomorrow. One that lets you win again. By the time the village boys start to sprout lanky limbs and awkward voices, your body is already decades ahead of them. Muscles compact, shoulders broad, spine curved like an old bridge groaning under weight. They strut like roosters, testing out strength on tree branches and heavy buckets, while you haul anvils without ceremony. They're learning to throw punches. You're learning to ignore pain. You're not becoming a man. You already are one. Or rather, something that looks like one, carved out of routine and iron filings. At 13, you've already fought more fires than fights. You're solid, unyielding. You don't flinch at heat or hesitate at weight. You just brace, lift, and carry. Your arms are stronger than some of the men in town, but not in a heroic, knight-lifting sword kind of way. It's more like teenager who's been repeatedly tackled by heavy tools and survived. Your shoulders pop every time you lift the hammer, which is often. Your back hums with a permanent ache, and your knees creak like you're aging in dog years. By now, you're convinced your skeleton is rusting from the inside. The other kids gossip about you, mostly behind your back, sometimes to your face when they think you won't hear them over the bellows. He never leaves the forge. I think he sleeps on the coal. Is that soot or just his skin now? They're not entirely wrong. The truth is, you've become part of the building. The soot between the cracks? That's half your sweat. The burn mark on the bench leg? Your shin did that last winter. The leather apron hanging on the hook has molded itself into your shape like a second skin. And your hands, let's talk about those. Once they were small and soft, clumsy at picking daisies or skipping stones. Now, they're tools in their own right. Fingers like iron hooks. Palms calloused so thick you barely feel splinters. Your fingernails? Half of them are gone or blackened into oblivion. When someone offers you a piece of bread, you cradle it like it's a sleeping hedgehog made of glass, because every knuckle you own feels like it's been cursed. You get paper cuts from the rough linen. Your grip can crush walnuts like they insulted your mother. But don't hand you anything delicate. You'll drop it. Or crush it. Or both. Historians argue whether blacksmiths held any medical knowledge, but honestly, what good would it do? There's no rest and recover in your world. Pull a muscle. Use the other arm. Twist your wrist. Wrap it in a rag and keep going. The forge doesn't care about your injury report. Neither does your father. Oh, your father. His vocabulary is still 90% grunts, 5% disapproval, and 5% hit it harder. He's softened slightly, mostly in the joints, not the heart. His scowl is a bit more permanent now. Sometimes you think he's proud of you. He watches the way you swing the hammer, nods once, then walks off muttering, "Took you long enough." That's the equivalent of a trophy ceremony around here. Meals are functional. You eat to survive, not to savor. Cold pottage? Stale bread? If it's a feast day, maybe a bit of dried pork that looks suspiciously like shoe leather. You chew with one eye on the forge and one hand on the tongs. You've burned your tongue so many times it's basically flame-proof. Sleep? It's not what you'd call restful. Your muscles ache so deep you can't lie still. Your ears still ring from the day's clanging. Sometimes your arms twitch mid-dream. Phantom hammer swings lurching you awake like a soldier reliving battle. You wake up gripping your blanket like it owes you silver. Some nights, you don't sleep at all. You just sit near the forge, staring at the coals as they die, wondering what it would be like to spend one day, just one, without a burn. And yet, something strange has started to happen. You've begun to enjoy the work, not in a cheerful, I love my job kind of way. More like Stockholm Syndrome with a pile of iron. You get a twisted satisfaction when a blade comes out straight, when a hinge swings smooth, when a stubborn piece of metal finally yields and curves exactly how you want it. It feels like alchemy, like magic that demands no spell books, just blisters and patience. People start coming to you directly now, not just to your father. "Can the boy take a look?" they ask. "He's got good hands." You shrug, say nothing, and fix the thing. You still don't get paid, but you get nods. Sometimes even a grunt of respect. It's something. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a man either. You're something else, a creature made of fire and fatigue. The forge doesn't care what age you are, it just asks one question, over and over. Can you still swing? So far, the answer is yes. But deep down in your blistered bones and overheated skull, you know one day it won't be. One day, your body will betray you. The hammer will slip. The heat will be too much. Your knees will give out like rotten timber. But not today. Today, the fire still wants feeding. The anvil wants company. And your father just grunted your name, which means another job is waiting. You grab your hammer. It's heavier than it was this morning. Or maybe you're just more tired. Either way, there's no time to care because you're the blacksmith's apprentice. And the iron won't bend itself. Smoke is no longer a smell to you, it's an environment. It creeps into your nostrils first, that thick, dry sting that singes the inside of your nose. Then it crawls down your throat like a polite but persistent snake, coiling tight until your coughs sound like old hinges trying to cry. At this point, your lungs don't complain anymore. They wheeze in acceptance. Some people in town say you always smell like fire. That's not quite right. Fire burns clean. You smell like fire's leftovers. Charred leather, old ash, metal dust, and a dash of cooked sweat. It clings to your hair, your skin, your soul. Even after bathing, which is rare and mostly symbolic, you're still wrapped in it. You walk into the tavern and people clear space as if a chimney just wandered in. There is no chimney in the forge. Just a hole in the roof, meant to let smoke escape, but more often inviting wind and rain to help stir the misery. On calm days, the smoke hangs low like a disappointed cloud. On windy days, it plays games, doubling back into your face no matter where you stand. You've tried tying rags over your mouth? Good luck breathing through them once they're soaked in sweat and soot. Your solution? Don't breathe too deeply, ever. Over time, you develop a smoker's cough, despite never touching tobacco. You hack up black gunk most mornings, spit discreetly in the corner, and get back to work. Your voice has changed too. No longer a child's chirp, it's grown coarse. Like your throat is lined with rust. Some customers say you sound like an old goat. Others say smoldering death. You take that as a compliment. Historians sometimes wonder how blacksmiths avoided lung disease. The short answer? They didn't. They just outworked their symptoms until the symptoms outlived them. No one talks about black lung when there's a sore due by sundown. And it's not just the smoke. It's the invisible threats. The fine metal shavings you breathe in while filing. The oil fumes during quenching. The bits of sand or grit kicked up from the floor. Even the occasional scorched rat hair from some unfortunate visitor to the coal bin. You've probably inhaled 5 different kinds of poison before lunch. There's no such thing as protective gear. No goggles, no filtered masks. Just your apron, a pair of scorched boots, and a deeply flawed sense of invincibility. You once saw a smith wear a damp cloth tied around his face. He passed out from heat stroke within an hour. Lesson learned. When the forge is at full roar, the heat makes the air shimmer. The smoke mixes with vapor from your sweat, forming a haze that turns the entire room into a half-formed nightmare. You squint through it like a mole pretending it can still see. Your eyes constantly burn, your eyebrows are half singed, and your lashes? Forget them. They were sacrificed to the forge years ago. Your workshop doesn't smell like anything pleasant. It's a stew of metal, fire, scorched oil, boiled leather, and a hint of panic. You've stopped trying to describe it to people. You just say hot and let them imagine the rest. They never get it right. One time, you tried leaving the door open for airflow. That worked until a gust of wind blew soot onto a client's freshly made dagger. He yelled. Your father yelled louder. You never opened the door again. And let's not even start on your eyes. They sting all the time. You blink soot. At night, you close your lids and see embers. The whites of your eyes are permanently pink. If someone compliments you on them, they're either being sarcastic or worrying you've been crying, which, let's be honest, you kind of have. Just without tears. Your ducks gave up months ago. Sometimes in winter, you think the smoke's a blessing. It keeps the forge warm. It wraps around your body like a filthy, suffocating blanket. But in summer, it's a punishment. The heat magnifies, the air grows sticky, and the smoke hangs heavier. Too lazy to leave, too cruel to ignore. You try not to think about long-term effects. That's a luxury for scholars and priests. You don't have time to wonder what your lungs look like. You only have time to finish the gate latch and maybe get a mouthful of beer before the next job rolls in. Rest is a rumor. Clean air? A fantasy. There's a kind of quiet dread in knowing you'll never breathe clearly again. That even in a meadow on your one-day off a season, you'll still smell smoke when there's none. You've walked through fresh rain and thought, smells like quenching oil. That's how deep it goes, and yet you adapt. You pace your breathing. You find spots in the forge where the air moves a little. You squint less, hunch more, drink water that tastes faintly of iron. You cough, spit, groan, and work. Always work. Some part of you remembers a time before all this. A time when air was just air. When the sun didn't shimmer from fumes. When your lungs didn't rattle like bellows missing a hinge. But that memory is fogged, literally. Covered in soot like everything else in your life. You wonder if you ever left this trade, would your body remember how to be clean? Would your lungs expand? Would your voice smooth out? Would your skin stop oozing charcoal every time you sweat? Or would the forge follow you forever, embedded in your cells, hiding in the shadows of your breath? Hard to say. For now, there's a hinge to finish. And the smoke isn't going anywhere. You know every dent in your hammer. You could trace them blindfolded. That one near the middle? From the time you misjudged the thickness of a stubborn hinge. The tiny chip on the side? A lesson from hitting cold iron too hard. Iron doesn't forgive arrogance. Your hammer's handle is slick with years of sweat, darkened like an old tree branch left out in storms. It's not just a tool, it's a limb. If someone ever took it from you, you'd walk in circles like a one-winged bird. You've named it, though you'll never admit that out loud. Everyone does eventually. When you swing the same chunk of metal thousands of times, you start to feel like it deserves a name. You curse at it, mutter to it, occasionally apologize. Some days, it feels like the only thing in the room that understands you. And yet it betrays you constantly. That's the thing about your tools. They're not your friends. They're barely co-workers. They're heavy, temperamental, and always one slip away from drawing blood. Your tongs? A cruel joke. They pinch you more often than they grip the iron properly. You've got scars on your fingertips from failed pickups where molten metal slipped out and tried to crawl back into your skin. Your file? More like a slow, sarcastic knife. You grind for hours to remove a burr, only to discover you filed the wrong edge. Your chisel? Once sharp, now mostly symbolic. It's been beaten so often it looks more like a dented spoon than a blade. Still, you use it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's there. You've learned not to trust new tools. They gleam too much, they lie. They pretend they'll help, but they're stiff, unpredictable, prone to slipping at the worst moments. Give you the old battered gear any day. At least you know what kind of pain it delivers. Historians still puzzle over how blacksmiths maintained their tools before mass production. The answer? Obsession. You oil them, sharpen them, inspect them like you would a wound. Every night you line them up on the bench. Not because you're neat, but because if anything's missing, you might lose your livelihood. Or a finger. And your apron? Oh, the apron. Once supple leather, now it crackles when you move. It smells like tragedy. It's patched with scraps from things you couldn't fix in time. There's a burn hole just above your knee from when a spark burrowed its way in like a particularly aggressive wasp. You didn't scream. You just stomped and cursed. Then you got back to work. The apron's job is protection, sure, but what it really does is trap every sharp, hot fragment of your day and press it against your belly like a fiery hug. It hangs stiff in winter, stiff in summer, and somehow always manages to absorb every drop of sweat your body produces. The workbench is your altar, stained, scorched, layered in the ghosts of projects past. Every groove tells a story, some of success, most of failure. There's the dent from the time you dropped an anvil corner on it. There's the dark smear where oil leaked for 2 months before anyone noticed. And those tiny cuts? That's where your rasp slipped and bit the wood instead of the blade. It's a chaotic masterpiece. To outsiders, it looks like madness. To you, it's a map. You know where everything is, even when you can't see it through the smoke. Your fingers reach before your eyes finish thinking. That's not skill. That's desperation trained into muscle memory. You once made the mistake of rearranging it. Cleaned everything, labeled hooks, organized nails by size. For one glorious day, you felt like a genius. You couldn't find anything for a week. So now, the chaos stays. A broken system, but yours. The file always lives under the chipped horseshoe. The punch tool balances against the cracked jug. And the rivet set? Always tilted slightly like it's too tired to stand straight. Just like you. Let's talk about injuries. You've been jabbed, pinched, sliced, crushed, and stabbed by every tool you own. Your hands have a sixth sense now. They flinch before something happens. Not out of fear, out of experience. You've developed an entire flinch vocabulary, the "oh no, that's slipping" twitch. The "I didn't mean to grab that hot end" jerk. And the full body shiver that says, "We're about to lose a thumbnail again, aren't we?" Your knuckles are lumpy. Your joints pop like old floorboards. Your forearms carry tiny white scars, some straight, some oddly curved, all permanent. One tool caught you on the chin once. Gave you a scar that still opens up when you laugh too hard. Which, let's be honest, doesn't happen often. Still, you care for them. Your tools, that is. Like family. Dysfunctional, backstabbing family, but family nonetheless. You oil your hammer handle so it doesn't split. You sharpen your chisels even when they're barely holding together. You talk to your rasp when it's being difficult, like coaxing a horse that knows you too well. Because without these tools, you don't eat, you don't work, you don't exist. No tool means no coin. No coin means no food. No food means you're just a very dirty person standing in a room full of iron that's judging you silently. And here's the cruel part. They know it. Every tool whispers the same promise. We'll help you survive, but we'll also take little pieces of you every day. And they're right, they do. But you keep using them anyway. Because it's not about comfort. It's not about pride. It's not even about legacy. It's about survival. And survival demands blisters. You don't wear a crown. You don't carry a sword. You don't march into battle or give stirring speeches. But without you, the village falls apart by Tuesday. You're the blacksmith. And whether they admit it or not, everyone needs you. When the knight's blade snaps, he storms in with pride wounded and sword in pieces. You fix it. When the farmer's plow cracks, bent by stubborn earth, he appears hat in hand. You fix it. When the monk's bell sounds more like a burp than a chime, or the baker's oven won't shut, or the shepherd's gate won't close. Guess who gets called? That's right. You. They show up unannounced, mid-swing, breathless with urgency and mud. I know you're busy, but could you just... There it is. The dreaded phrase? Could you just? The blacksmith's equivalent of a punch to the gut. Could you just reshape this dagger that's been snapped in two? Could you just forge a new latch by this afternoon because the pig got out again? Could you just make a new set of nails for the coop, but... Oh, we forgot the iron, the wood, and also the money? They think you're waiting. Always waiting. As though you sit around soot-soaked and humming, praying someone might bless you with a crooked hinge or broken hinge. As if your forge isn't roaring constantly, as if the backlog of repairs isn't older than some of their children. And yet, you do it. You always do it. Why? Because if you don't, no one else can. That's your curse, your power, your prison. You're not just a worker, you're infrastructure. Medieval tech support, a one-man emergency response unit who smells like wet charcoal and sleep deprivation. The worst part? They never say thank you. When their new gate latch clicks closed perfectly, they grunt. When their pitchfork works again, a nod. No coin, no gratitude. Just the quiet assumption that, well, you must love this. After all, you do it every day. But here's the secret, you know. You know they couldn't last a week without you. If you walked away, the village would slow like a jammed wheel. Tools would rust, doors would hang loose, carts would limp on bent axles. And still, they'd pretend it was all fine until it very much wasn't. Payment is a slippery concept in your world. Sometimes coin, sometimes a favor. Sometimes a loaf of bread so stale it could be used as a weapon. One man tried to pay you with a dead chicken. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't useful. You buried it behind the workshop and pretended it never happened. You don't set prices, you suggest them. Everyone haggles. Everyone assumes you're overcharging. It's just a bit of metal, they say, as though metal bends itself. As though heat, precision, and a decade of muscle memory don't cost anything. They never see the work behind the product. They see the final shape, sleek blade, sharp hook, smooth horseshoe, and assume it came easily. They don't see the misfires, the reheats, the hundreds of tiny calculations in your hands. They see the hinge, not the hours. Worse still, you're the dumping ground for other people's mistakes. Bent nails from the carpenter? Can you fix these? Dented dagger from a drunken brawl? Can you straighten this out? Mysterious chunk of metal no one can identify but insist must be valuable. Can you polish it, just in case? You nod, you grunt, you fix. You're the reliable background hum in their lives. Never spotlighted, never celebrated. When the village sings praises, it's always for the knight who slew the boar, the priest who delivered a fine sermon, or the miller who has extra fat goats this year. No one sings about the man who forged the nail that held the church door in place. No one praises the bracket that saved the wheel from collapse, but they rely on you more than any of them. Historians might romanticize the blacksmith as a figure of strength and independence, but they rarely capture the fatigue, the emotional weight of being necessary but invisible. You are praised only by absence. When things work, you're forgotten. When things break, you're blamed. Still, you keep at it. Not because you crave recognition, not even for the coin, thin as it may be. You do it because this world, your world, runs on people like you. People who don't stop, who don't complain out loud, who fix things because brokenness can't be ignored. One time during a festival, the village honored the knight with a feast. You'd repaired his sword the week before, no mention, no extra bread. But halfway through the celebration, his scabbard broke. In front of everyone. Guess who they called? You showed up mid-bite of your first decent meal in weeks and fixed it on the spot. The applause wasn't for you, but in that brief moment you knew, this place couldn't function without your hands. Without your sweat, without your hammer song echoing through the morning fog. You are the village's bones, and bones don't get thanked. They just keep holding everything together. Peace sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? No raiders, no screaming noblemen demanding a broadsword by sundown, no panic orders for arrowheads by the 100. The nights stay home. The fields grow uninterrupted. The harvest is full and boring. The village breathes easy. And you? You starve a little. Because while it's true you repair plows and hinges, patch pans and make the occasional iron pothook, it's war that truly pays the bills. When there's fighting, there's business. Weapons need forging. Armor needs mending. Horseshoes wear out faster under galloping hooves, weighed down by terrified men. Shields splinter, swords chip. lances bend like cooked reeds. Every clang on the battlefield is a future coin in your hand. But when peace settles in, it does so with a smug silence. Suddenly your forge feels too quiet. Not restful. Stagnant. The orders trickle down to, "Can you sharpen this scythe?" And the bell doesn't ring quite right. One farmer asked you to rework a rake. A rake? You reshaped half a ribbed fork because his goat tripped on it. You didn't get paid for that job. He offered onions. 3 specifically. 2 were soft. Sure, there's still work. There's always work. But now it's petty, thankless, and paid in food that's halfway to compost. War is ugly, but at least it respects your time. War doesn't haggle over a cooking spit. War doesn't say, "I'll owe you," then dodge you for 2 market cycles. Now you've become a haggler, a beggar, and a part-time merchant all in one. You sharpen a sickle and spend 5 minutes trying to convince the owner that yes, it is worth more than 1 boiled egg. You threaten to keep the sickle as collateral, and he offers to trade you a ferret instead. You don't want a ferret. You try making household goods to fill the gap. Door latches, candle stands, tiny decorative pokers. But there's no profit in it. The rich want fancy imported ironwork from the city. The poor want it for free. You look around and realize something awful. Everyone wants your work to be magic, but they want to pay you like a stable boy. "Can you make it look nicer?" they ask. "It's just metal," they say. "Shouldn't take long," they assume, casually dropping off a rusted mess of iron that'll take 3 hours just to decontaminate. You start missing the rush, not the blood, not the panic, but the purpose. When knights lined up outside your forge, their coin purses jingling with urgency and respect, you mattered. Now? Now you make keys for doors that no one locks. You patch pots so old they leak just from shame. And don't even think about raising your prices. Last time you tried, the baker looked at you like you'd just eaten his best flour. "For that?" he said, pointing at a perfectly balanced, hand-shaped bread peel you'd forged to perfection. "It's not even made of silver." Number? It's made of skill. It's made of time. Of smoke-stung eyes and sore fingers. But that's not a currency people respect. Not unless there's danger outside the walls. So now you spend more time bartering than forging. You keep a log of what you're owed. 6 eggs, 1 duck, still pending. A small jar of lard, and someone's promise of, "Next time I swear." Your ledger looks less like an account book and more like the ingredients for a very sad stew. Some days you sit on the edge of your anvil and wonder, how long before they forget they need you? Because blacksmithing isn't a novelty. It's invisible when it works. Everyone assumes the door swings because it should. The cart rolls because it must. But everything they take for granted passes through your hands. You've forged the very bones of the village. Still, when the war ends, it feels like your forge has been demoted. Once a vital artery of the community, now it's just background noise. You try branching out. Decorative knives, toy swords for rich kids. You even experiment with making a wind vane shaped like a rooster. It's sold. Eventually, after someone offered to pay you in pickled radish and gossip, you start spending more time watching the road, listening for rumors of bandits, border skirmishes, or tax hikes that might spark another conflict. You hate that part of yourself, the part that hopes for just a little unrest. Just enough to get the swords ringing again. Because when swords break, you eat. Historians rarely mention this paradox. Peace was great for kings and farmers, but for tradesmen like you it was famine. War brought suffering, yes, but it also brought demand, urgency, and coin. Now there's only slow decay, an economy of rust and recycled promises. So you wait. You rewrap your hammer's grip. You sharpen your file. You inventory nails you didn't have to make this week. And you listen. Not for birdsong or church bells, but for the distant sound of hooves. The worst part of your job isn't the burns or the back pain or the days without pay. It's that it never ends. there's no finish line. No moment of, ah, at last it's done. Because in the world of the blacksmith, one job completed simply opens the door for 3 more. It's not work, it's a cycle. An endless one. Hammer, quench, rasp, repeat. You don't keep a to-do list. That implies you might one day finish everything on it. Instead, you carry tasks in your head like weights tied to your ribs. Fix the plow before market day. Make nails for the new shed. File down that butcher's cleaver. Reseat the miller's wheel rim. And remember, the friar's bell cracked again. Every time you finish something, someone else shows up holding something broken and looking at you like it's your fault the world wears down. One man handed you a rake he'd run over with a cart. Can you just straighten it out? He asked, as though just meant in 5 seconds with no effort. You spent 2 hours wrestling that thing back into shape. He paid you with a nod and half a turnip. You rise before the sun and go to sleep after it's gone. Not because you want to, because the forge wants you to. It's a needy beast. If you ignore it, the coals cool, the tools rust, the bellows stiffen. You don't get days off. You get moments off. Short bursts of inactivity between one demand and the next. You eat standing up, your hands still half gripping the hammer. You sleep curled up like a hinge, muscles still twitching from phantom swings. You dream of tongs falling and anvils tilting and clients who say just one more thing, and mean 10. The joke? Even the quick jobs never are. A shepherd shows up holding a mangled bit of metal that might have once been a gate latch. Can you do anything with this? He asks. You nod. Of course, that's what you do. But inside you're calculating. 2 hours of reshaping, an hour to reheat, half an hour to file, and 5 interruptions by villagers asking if their job is done yet. They say things like, I don't mean to rush you, but while literally rushing you. Your forge is the heartbeat of the village, and like any heart, it has no patience for rest. The fire demands constant attention. You can't walk away from it. It will die. The bellows crack if left idle too long. The anvil shifts in summer heat. Your workbench swells and splinters in the damp. The leather straps of your apron harden in winter until they creak like old bones. Even holidays don't mean freedom. Sunday is technically a day of rest, unless, of course, someone's ox cart wheel breaks on the way to church. Then suddenly you're hammering iron with one eye on the road, praying the priest doesn't pass by and frown at your open forge. You try to catch rest where you can. A moment leaning on the doorframe, soaking in the early morning air. A few breaths beside the river washing soot off your arms, only to realize it's already seeped into your skin. You tell yourself these small pauses count. That they're enough, but they never are. Your apprentice doesn't get it yet. He still believes in endings. You send him to fetch nails and he asks if that's all for today. You laugh, not kindly, just tired. You remember being him, eyes wide, shoulders still hopeful, hands still blistered in new spots each week. He'll learn. The forge teaches. Slowly, brutally. It whispers its truths into your bones. That time doesn't belong to you. The tools don't care about your plans. That even your dreams have work in them now. And oh, the dreams. They're a montage of sparks and bellows and iron that won't bend no matter how hard you strike. You wake up clenching your fists, heart racing, breath smoky. Sometimes you rise already sore, like you never actually stopped swinging. You've forgotten what silence sounds like. When the forge cools, when the tools are laid down, when night drapes over the village like a heavy cloak, you should find peace, but you don't. You twitch, you listen, you wait. Because surely someone will knock. And someone always does. The friar's door latch is loose, the baker's oven has warped again. A boy lost the head of his wooden sword and his father wants it fixed just right. You say yes, you always say yes because the blacksmith doesn't clock out. He winds down slowly like a forge cooling over hours, not minutes. The heat in your bones doesn't vanish, it fades reluctantly. The ache doesn't stop, it shifts. You wonder what it would be like to be someone else. A miller, a tanner, even a brewer. Their jobs finish. The sack is full, the hide is treated, the beer is brewed. There's closure. You don't get closure. You get more hinges, more nails, more things falling apart faster than you can keep up with. But here's the strange part. The part you can't quite admit aloud, even to yourself. You kind of love it. The clatter, the repetition, the never-ending rhythm of making, mending, shaping. Each strike of the hammer isn't just work, it's proof that you're needed, that something, somewhere, depends on you. And maybe that's why you keep going. Not for thanks. Not even for coin. But because in a world constantly breaking, you're the one still holding it together. You'd think after a full day of hammering, hauling, sweating, and occasionally setting bits of yourself on fire, that you'd sleep like a corpse. That you'd collapse the moment your head touches the straw sack and wake up 12 hours later, refreshed and soot-free, dreaming of a life where tongs never slip. But no, you eat standing up and you sleep in pieces. Let's start with food, if you can call it that. You burn more calories than a panicked horse in a hailstorm, and what do you get for it? A crust of bread so dry it could sand metal. A ladle of cold pottage that's more memory than meal, and maybe, just maybe, on a day of high fortune and low errors, a chunk of salted pork that's mostly salt and mystery. You don't sit for meals, you crouch. One hand holds the bread, the other shuffles hot tools out of the way. You chew fast so the next job doesn't catch you mid-bite. Ash drifts from the forge onto your plate. You pick it off like seasoning. Conversations during meals? Forget it. Food is not a social affair, it's refueling. If someone knocks on your door mid-spoonful with a broken hinge, that stew goes cold. Every single time. You dream of a world where food arrives hot, stays warm, and isn't interrupted by someone holding a sword that needs just a little straightening. It's not that you don't enjoy food, it's that you no longer expect to enjoy it. And sleep? That cruel illusion? When you finally crawl into bed, if you even make it that far, you're carrying enough tension to break your own spine. Your hands throb with the ghost of every hammer blow. Your back feels like a twisted piece of scrap. And your ears, oh your ears, still ring from the day's symphony of clangs and groans. Your bed is straw-stuffed misery. It smells like forge smoke, old ale, and regret. You lie on your side because lying flat makes your shoulders ache. You cover yourself with a wool blanket so scratchy it could exfoliate barnacles. You shift, twist, grumble, and finally doze off, only to dream of more work. Sometimes your dreams are so vivid you wake up swearing you already fixed that wheel hub. But nope. There it is, outside waiting. The wheel still broken, the customer still frowning. Reality still rude. You've developed a strange relationship with the night. You dread it because it teases you with the idea of rest. But your body doesn't know how to rest anymore. It just unplugs briefly. You wake up sore in new ways. Your arm might be numb. Your foot might have cramped so hard it feels like it aged 10 years while you slept. And then there are the midnight surprises. Someone's horse throws a shoe. A windstorm rips a door off its hinges. A noble decides at 1 a.m. that his sword must be sharpened before his boar hunt at dawn. You try locking the door once. That didn't work. They just yelled louder, or knocked on your window, or sent a child to tug on your sleeve while you were mid-snore. So now, you don't even bother pretending. You keep your boots by the bed, your apron hangs near the door, you fall asleep in your tunic, hammer within arm's reach, because in your world, rest is a luxury and disruption is destiny. Historians occasionally write about how medieval blacksmiths were respected craftsmen, often central to the village. What they leave out is that being central means you're also everyone's last resort. You don't get quiet hours. You get emergency calls in the form of frantic knocking. And when you drag yourself out of bed, bones cracking, eyelids protesting, You don't even get a thank you. You get, can you hurry? Or worse, I didn't think it'd take this long. You're not just sleep deprived, you're time deprived. Your life has been divided into fragments. Work, chew, fix, half nap, wake, repeat. The idea of a full night's rest feels like a myth. Like dragons or honest tax collectors, and yet you go on. Because the Forge doesn't care that your knees sound like gravel. That your dreams are just reruns of reality. That your meals are speed-eaten ash cakes with a side of interrupted thoughts. You endure. Because someone has to keep the work moving. Because people don't stop needing things just because you're tired. And deep down, beneath the exhaustion, beyond the hunger, you know this. If you stopped, the silence would be worse than the ringing. The stillness more painful than the ache. Because the clang of the hammer is more than a noise. It's a reminder that you're still here. Still needed, still burning. There was a time when your hands were soft. When you could feel the texture of a flower petal or trace the edge of a coin without accidentally cutting it in half. That time is long gone. Now your hands are, let's say, industrial. They're not really hands anymore. They're more like forged artifacts, weathered tools that happen to be attached to your arms. The fingers are swollen, calloused, and thick with old injuries. The skin is cracked like drought-baked earth. The palms? A roadmap of scars, burns, and permanent grime that not even a holy bath could cleanse. You don't shake hands anymore. You clank them. Your grip strength is absurd. You can snap a twig just by brushing it. You once cracked a walnut shell between your thumb and forefinger, and the village kid watching you ran home crying. His father asked you to stop doing witchy things. But it's not magic. It's years of heat, hammering, and stubbornness. You've got burns in places you've forgotten you even injured. Some from grabbing the wrong end of a rod. Others from flying sparks. A few from accidental testing, also known as, you thought that was cool enough to touch, didn't you? And the cuts. Oh, the cuts. Some are clean, neat slices from chisels gone rogue. Others are jagged, accidental jabs from tools falling just the wrong way. A few you don't even notice until the blood smears across your apron like someone tried to paint with beet juice. You don't flinch anymore. You just wrap it in whatever cloth isn't soaked and keep going. Nails? A luxury. You've lost several. One went black and fell off after a hammer caught it square on the edge. Another got crushed so badly it's grown back sideways ever since. You joke that your fingers have gone feral, no longer suitable for anything more refined than holding glowing metal and dodging falling tongs. Historians often wonder how blacksmiths dealt with long-term damage to their hands. The answer? They didn't. You just adapted. You learned to live with pain until it dulled into background noise. You started using the less injured hand. You cursed under your breath. You moved on. Your joints creak when it rains. Your knuckles throb in winter. Your wrist locks up if you hold the hammer too long in one position. There are days when you wake up and your fingers don't want to open. You stare at them until they remember their job. Dexterity? Gone. You drop things regularly now. Cups, coins, small tools. You once tried to button your tunic and ended up stabbing yourself with the needle. You've developed a system of workarounds. Big gestures, heavy gloves, a whole lot of creative grunting. And yet, despite everything, your hands still work. Not gracefully, not precisely, but functionally. They do what they have to. They grip the hammer, they hold the tongs, they guide the rasp. They shape iron with a kind of brute intelligence forged from repetition. These hands have become your identity. Not because they're beautiful, but because they're yours. Every scar is a page in a biography written in blood and ash. That jagged burn near your thumb. From the time you reached into the coals too fast. That line across your palm. From when you tried to catch falling steel and nearly caught a new life as a three-fingered legend. There's a weird pride in the damage. Other people see a mess of ruined skin. You see a resume. Still, the toll is real. You can't write anymore, not that you ever wrote much to begin with. You can barely lace your own boots. Tying knots, a full event. Holding a spoon, manageable unless it's too light, in which case it flies across the room like you're hosting a food-based siege. Some evenings you sit with your hands in cold water just to get them to stop throbbing. You've tried herbal salves, village remedies, even letting your apprentice rub your fingers with lamb fat. Don't ask. But nothing helps for long. And yet, you keep going. Because in this trade, you don't get to ask for new hands. You use what you've got until they stop working. Then you adapt. Then you grit your teeth and find a way to keep swinging. You've seen older smiths who can't lift hammers anymore. They teach. They supervise. They shuffle like broken door hinges. You're not there yet, but you feel it coming. Every pang, every snap, every numb fingertip is a whisper from your future. And here's the strange part. When you look at your hands, broken, battered, barely flexible, you feel something close to affection. They've built hinges, blades, nails, wheels, and more. They've held the very shape of the village together. They've hurt, yes, but they've never quit. In a world of wear and tear, your hands are your legacy. They might not be pretty, but they're strong, and they still swing. You don't smell great. In fact, if you ever did, that's a long-forgotten chapter. Since you became your father's apprentice, your scent has permanently shifted into a spectrum somewhere between burnt goat hide and smoked despair. You've tried to fix it once, long ago. You dunked yourself in the stream behind the forge, scrubbed your arms with a pine branch, even stole a bit of lavender oil from your sister's wedding bundle. It lasted maybe 15 minutes. Then you walked back into the forge and the fire welcomed you like an angry lover. Within seconds, the lavender had surrendered to coal smoke. The pine scent dissolved into burnt leather. Your sweat, always eager to join the chaos, brought its usual tang of iron and fatigue. And just like that, you were back to normal. You smell like a fire that gave up halfway through burning down the house. Not that it matters much. No one expects a blacksmith to smell pleasant, but there's a difference between expected stink and tavern-clearing aura. You walk into a room and people find excuses to leave. Someone's soup goes cold instantly. Children sneeze. The innkeeper automatically seats you by a window, every time, and always near the back, preferably downwind. Even animals have opinions. Dogs whimper. Cats glare and disappear. One time, a chicken fainted. You don't talk about that incident. Your clothes don't help. You wear the same singed tunic every day. It used to be blue. Now, it's a vague charcoal hue with occasional ash-colored streaks that could pass for a pattern if you squint and believe in miracles. It has so many burn holes, it looks like it lost a battle with a candle. The sleeves are uneven, one shorter from an unfortunate encounter with a molten horseshoe. Over that, you wear your leather apron. Theoretically protective, practically a walking hazard. It smells like fear, old sweat, and scorched fat. In winter, it stiffens into armor. In summer, it sticks to your body like a second, screaming skin. You'd wash it, but frankly, you're afraid of what would crawl out. Your boots are tragic. One sole is thinner than the village gossip. The other has a hole big enough to double as ventilation. They've absorbed so much grime. They make squishing sounds even when dry. Bathing? A charming concept. One you experience maybe once a season. Twice if someone dies and you're required to appear in a chapel. Water is cold, scarce, and needed for the forge. So you wash like someone hiding evidence. A quick splash to the face, a rinse behind the ears, and maybe, a full body dunk if the stream isn't frozen solid. Soap is a fantasy. If you manage to borrow some, it gives up halfway through the job. You've watched soap dissolve in your wash basin out of sheer protest. You smell so strongly of iron that children say you taste like swords. You don't know why they're tasting you. You don't want to know. And let's not forget your hair. Once soft and maybe even a bit curly, it now exists in a permanent state of matted and alarmed. You've tried trimming it. The scissors got stuck. Now you just tie it back with a leather strip and hope it doesn't catch fire again. Still, your scent serves a purpose. It's a warning system. When people smell you coming, they get out of the way. You never wait in line. You rarely get robbed. Once during a festival, a drunk noble tried to shove past you, caught a whiff, and sobered up instantly. Even the town thief avoids you. "Not worth it," he once muttered. "You smell like curses." Historians might overlook this part. They write of blacksmiths as revered craftsmen, the heart of the medieval village. But they forget to mention the other truth. You're a walking cloud of smoke, oil, and stubbornness. You carry the scent of labor, of fire-fed survival, of metal made into purpose. Some days you miss the idea of smelling good, of wearing clean clothes, of walking into a room and not causing people to check their pockets for mint leaves. But that's not your life. Your life is bellows, sparks, and sweat that smells like scorched sausage. Your life is a leather apron that's absorbed more history than the church walls. Your life is being a walking nosebleed of odor. And weirdly, you've made peace with it. Because the stink means you've been working. The smoke means the forge is alive. The sweat means you're still moving. And you'd rather smell like 1,000 years of fire than smell like someone who's never held a hammer. You didn't choose the forge chose you. Through your father's calloused hands, through the unspoken expectations passed down like an heirloom no one asked for and no one dares to drop. And now you're doing the same. Your son is 7, maybe 8. You've lost track. Time isn't measured in birthdays here. It's measured in burned fingertips and batches of nails. He doesn't run wild through fields with a stick for a sword like the other boys. He fetches coal. He pumps the bellows until his arms shake. He holds the tongs while sparks fly dangerously close to his face, blinking hard but not flinching. You mutter, "Good," and toss him a nod, which in your family might as well be a standing ovation. He smells like wet burlap and roasted iron. Same as you did at his age. Same as you still do. You catch yourself sniffing his tunic once, just to check. Yep. He's officially a blacksmith's son. Permanently infused with the scent of effort and inevitability. And yes, you feel guilty. A little, not enough to stop. Because this is survival. You're not being cruel, you're preparing him. Like you were prepared. Like your father was before you. He watches you work with the same wide-eyed awe you once gave your old man. Half fascinated, half terrified. He mimics your hammer swings with a stick, exaggerates your grunts for laughs. But when the time comes and the iron's glowing and you say, "Hold it steady," his hand doesn't shake. That's what matters. You remember that look when you watched your father dominate the fire, shape raw metal into something that mattered. You thought he was a god, a terrible soot-covered deity who spoke in bellows and answered only to iron. Now you know better. He wasn't made of stone. He was made of exhaustion, muscle memory, and the constant pressure of being the one who must know what to do. That's you now. You teach the boy everything. Not through books, not through stories, through demonstration, through repetition, through mild, loving shouting. Too soft. That's cold. You'll burn off your eyebrows like that. He flinches. You tell him not to. You show him how to test heat by color, not touch. How to listen for the hiss and the quench. How to know when a blade is ready, not by a timer, but by instinct, by feel. Sometimes you shout more than you need to. Old habits. Sometimes it's anger, yes, but more often, it's fear. He's small. The world is sharp. You've already burned yourself enough for the both of you, and still you worry he'll find a new way to get scarred. You try to soften things. You save him the meat off your plate when you can. You tell him stories beside the forge while the coals die down. You give him little tasks that feel big, like holding the hammer or counting the nails. But tenderness doesn't last long in the forge. There's too much to do. And your voice still echoes with the sound of your own father yelling, even though he's long gone. Or at least sitting silent in the corner, bones fused to his favorite stool. The boy's hands are already toughening. His arms are growing stronger from work, not play. He sleeps in the corner of the forge, wrapped in a blanket that smells like coal and reassurance. And you tell yourself, this is good. This is right. This is tradition. Historians love to wax poetic about lineage and trades passed from father to son. They imagine noble continuity. They forget the burns. They forget the weight. They forget the looks. Your son's eyes when he realizes this is it. This is what life looks like, not for a day, but for decades. You don't lie to him. You don't say it gets easier. You don't promise glory. You don't tell him he'll be famous. You tell him the truth. It hurts, but you get used to it. Don't flinch. That last one again and again, because flinching means pain. Flinching means you drop the iron. Flinching means you miss the strike. And you can't afford mistakes. The boy learns, faster than you expect. And one day, while you're filing a blade, he taps you on the shoulder and holds out something small. A hook. Not perfect, but clean. Useful. You take it. You turn it over in your hands. And without thinking, you nod. That nod. Silent, brief, and utterly life-changing. You remember the first time your father gave you one. It stayed in your chest for weeks. He beams. You don't say anything else, because the work isn't done. You hear the bellows slow. The fire needs feeding. Another order waits on the bench. A farmer with a busted spade is knocking. You hand your son the tongs. He steps up unsure. You say, "Grip it right." He nods. The cycle continues. And yes, there's a part of you, a quiet part you never speak aloud, that whispers, maybe it should stop with me. Maybe the line should break. Maybe the boy should run in fields, pick berries, make music. But then you remember how often the village needs you. How badly things fall apart without someone to fix them. And you look at your boy, strong, useful, learning. And you know he will be okay, because someone has to keep the fire going. And now it's his turn to burn. Your body was never built to last, but it held out longer than you expected. Now it's starting to fall apart. Not all at once, but in slow, treacherous pieces. Like a wagon wheel that creaks louder each week until finally it drops a spoke mid-journey. Your knees are the first to go. They complain every morning, every time you crouch, every time you stand. They sound like two old chairs arguing. Sometimes they just refuse. You bend down for a nail and suddenly you're stuck there, halfway to the floor and halfway to giving up. Your back's been aching for years, but now it screams. You used to be able to twist around, lift an anvil, slam the hammer for hours. Now you wake up sore from just sleeping. You sneeze wrong and throw out your spine. You shift in bed and your shoulder decides it's taking the day off. Your fingers, the same ones that once bent iron like it was dough, tremble when you try to lift your mug. It's not age exactly, it's accumulation. A lifetime of tiny injuries, ignored warnings, and stubborn grit, layered like rust. The forge is still hot, still loud, still demanding. But your body isn't answering the call as quickly. The hammer feels heavier, the fire hotter, the anvil more immovable. You catch yourself sighing before jobs you used to tackle without thought. You've started handing small tasks to your son. Not because you're lazy. Because you have to. You tell him it's training, and that's not a lie. But it's also delegation. Survival. When your elbow locks mid-swing or your vision blurs after an hour by the coals, he steps in. He's strong now. His hands know the weight. His eyes know the glow. You still work, of course. Pride won't let you stop. But the rhythm has changed. You sit more. You supervise. You point instead of act. That needs more heat. Don't quench yet. Hit it from the side. You sound like your father did in his final years, gruff, slow, and filled with reluctant wisdom. The villagers notice. They speak to your son now. They ask if something's ready. They hand him payment. They start with, "Can he do it?" instead of, "Can you?" They still nod when they see you. Still mutter, "Master Smith," or "Good morning, sir." But they talk to the boy. He has the calloused hands now. The blisters are fresh on his skin. He's the one who smells like sweat and steam and long hours. You don't envy him, but you're proud. Historians might say craftsmen in the Middle Ages worked until they dropped. And yes, that's mostly true. But there's a quieter story they often miss: the slow surrender. The passing of skill not just as inheritance, but as necessity. Because eventually your body stops asking permission. It just stops cooperating. You forget things now. Simple things. Which tools you left by the wheelbarrow. Whether you quenched the blade already. Whether that hinge was due Thursday or Tuesday. Your son corrects you gently. You grunt in response. And there's shame in that. You hate forgetting. You hate weakness. You hate needing help in the same forge where you once did everything yourself, barefoot, half-starved, and fireproof. But there's also peace. Because when you lean back and watch your boy swing the hammer just right, when the iron yields, the shape appears, and the work works, you feel something loosen in your chest. Something you've carried for so long, you didn't even know it had weight. Responsibility. It's shifting. You're not done yet. The fire still speaks to you, but the conversation is changing. The forge doesn't roar at you now, it murmurs. It respects your limits only because you've earned them. You don't talk about what's coming, the end, the silence, the day when your hands won't answer at all, but you feel it. And you're not afraid. Because your legacy isn't written in stone. It's shaped in metal, in tools, in the muscle memory of your son. And someday, when he's older, when his back starts to bend, and his hands begin to betray him, he'll do the same. He'll pass the hammer down again. Not because he wants to, but because someone has to keep the fire going. You'll be gone, but the forge will still breathe. You never wore a badge, no title, no medal. No bard sang your name in the tavern after dark. But still, everything moved because you moved. You weren't the hero in stories. You weren't the one who slew the beast, married the princess, or sailed into legend. You were the one who made the sword that let him do it. You were the gear. Not the banner flapping in the wind, but the bolt holding the pole to the wall. Not the wheel rolling into battle, but the rivet that kept the cart from splitting open at the bend in the road. Not the bell that rang, but the hook that held the rope in place. And no one ever noticed. Not really, but you were there. Every hinge you forged was a door that opened for someone. Every nail you hammered into being held a roof that didn't collapse on a winter night. Every ring you shaped, every buckle, hook, pin, and clasp, each one let someone else live easier, move safer, breathe steadier. They don't sing about that, and they never will. But you remember. You remember the mother who brought you her son's broken toy and wept with relief when you fixed it. The merchant whose wagon made it over the pass because your reinforcements held. The gate that didn't give in when the storm came. The field that got plowed because your blade held through the rocky soil. There's no parade for that. But that doesn't mean it wasn't glory. Your son sees it now. Slowly, in pieces. The pride in function. The sacredness in reliability. He asked once if you ever wanted more. More what? Titles? Praise? Number more purpose, maybe. But never more recognition. Because you didn't do it for that. You did it because things break. Because people need them fixed. And because the world needs someone willing to hold it together when no one else knows how. You didn't light the torch that led the charge. You hammered the bracket that kept the torch from falling off the wall. That's enough. That's more than enough. And now, your grip loosening, your leg stiffening, your voice quieter than it used to be, you're still the gear. Just one that turns slower, but the system still moves. Because you made it that way. Your son has the hammer now. His swing is surer. His stance, solid. He doesn't need your hands anymore, but he still needs your eyes, your ear, your memory of how metal thinks. You still speak when it matters. When he holds the iron too long, when he forgets that shape is not just strength, but intention. You don't lecture, you murmur. One-word lessons. Angle. Heat. Wait. And he listens. You've passed on more than a trade. You've passed on a way of seeing. Because blacksmithing isn't just bending metal, it's solving puzzles that burn. It's giving structure to chaos. It's finding form in fire. And that fire will keep burning long after your hand stops swinging. So, no, your name isn't in any book, but you were there. In every working hinge. Every tool that didn't fail. Every morning the forge lit and the village turned its back on disaster without even realizing how close it had come. You were the gear, and the world turned because of you. You used to think the forge was loud, but in truth, it's the silence afterward that makes your ears ring. Now, in the mornings, there's no fire waiting to be stoked, no hiss of hot metal plunged into water, no clatter of tools shuffled into place like players on a stage. You wake not to the rhythm of labor, but to stillness, to the sound of your own joints cracking as you rise from bed, to the slow realization that nothing urgently depends on you anymore. You sit by the door, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells faintly of smoke, though the scent is fading. That frightens you more than you'll admit. The forge is still there, of course. Your son runs it now. He's strong, louder than you ever were, more confident with customers. You hear the hammer ringing, not your own, but his. Sharper, faster, more precise. You told him once on it without looking up. Too clean. Needs more soul. He smirked. I'm making metal, not poetry. You didn't argue, but you still think he's wrong. He's efficient, yes, but he hasn't yet learned how to listen to the metal. To wait for it to speak, to lean into its moods, its temper. You knew how to coax iron like a lover. He commands it like a soldier. Still, you're proud. Not because he's better, but because he's doing it. He didn't run. He didn't leave the village for a city workshop or a merchant's coin. He stayed. He inherited the flame not out of obligation, but out of understanding. Somewhere buried in soot and repetition, he felt the same thing you once did. That making things which last is the closest a person comes to permanence. You watch the villagers come and go now. They bring work to your son, rarely to you. They barely glance toward the stool in the corner where you sit, half hidden in shadow. Sometimes they nod, sometimes they don't. That used to sting. It used to sit in your gut like a nail swallowed sideways. But now it's just a fact. A natural shift, like the tide. The blacksmith is no longer you. It's him. And you've become something else. Not retired. Not forgotten. Just quieter. You take walks now. Not far. Your knees protest anything ambitious. But far enough to see the fields you used to ignore. You notice the wildflowers. You marvel at how the wind bends the wheat. You listen to birdsong and realize it's not drowned out anymore. And your hands, those brutal, battered hands, have softened. Just a little. You still bear the calluses like metals. But your grip isn't what it was. The strength has slipped away in small, polite increments. One day, a village boy runs past and knocks your cane to the ground. He picks it up sheepishly and hands it back. Did you used to be the blacksmith? He asks, eyes wide, mouth sticky with berries. You pause, then you say, I still am. Because you are. Even if your hands don't hammer, your memory does. Even if your lungs no longer taste of coal, your bones remember the rhythm. You see a crooked hinge and feel the fix. You hear the hiss of quenching water in your dreams. You smell the phantom smoke in your clothes. You are no longer the fire, but you are its afterglow. At home, a shelf holds a few things you kept. Out of sentiment, not function. That first twisted dagger, the horseshoe that broke your toe, A nail shaped like a question mark. Tools too worn to use, too beloved to discard. You used to think these were trophies. Now, you know, they're witnesses. Each one saw a version of you no one else remembers. You don't need statues, you don't need stories. You have iron. Iron that still holds gates, locks doors, fixes wheels, binds the village together, quietly, invisibly, stubbornly. You once asked yourself, where is my name? Now you understand. It's not etched into a monument. It's hammered into utility. It's hidden in hinges, nestled in nails, whispered in the swing of every door that opens because of something you shaped long ago. And when you go, because everyone does, you won't be carried in song or scripture. You'll be carried in weight. In objects that still work, in a forge that still burns, and in a sun who still listens for the sound of glowing iron before the first strike.